Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfisherinsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Today's guest is Brad Bevis. Brad is the president of Scientific Anglers. Brad took over the role as president in 2016 and has further grown the brand Scientific Anglers into a global premium fly line powerhouse. Scientific Anglers has strong roots within the fly fishing industry dating back almost 75 years and has always remained in the hearts of many anglers. Scientific Anglers is known for being the leaders in both fly line technology and innovation. Brad and his team have personally been responsible for such technology. And here he is today to join us. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Greg. Glad to be here. Excited to talk about Scientific Anglers and the products that we manufacture.
Awesome. I know everyone's excited to listen to that. So let's just jump right into this. Brad, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Originally, I was born and raised in Boulder, Colorado. Started fly fishing when I was about 8 years old. Actually, was tying flies before I started actually casting. Started working at a fly shop in Boulder when I was 14 back in 1983. Front Range Anglers. Managed the store through high school, bought in, became a partner there shortly after graduating high school, and worked there full time while I was going to CU Boulder. Had 16 good years at the fly shop, really got to understand the retail side of the business. We were a full brick and mortar retail fly shop, did some trip hosting destinations globally, education, both through fly casting, fly tying, rod building, etc. So kind of cut my teeth early and really got to dive in and experience a lot of different facets within the industry in terms of the retail and education side of the business. Got married, started a family, realized quickly that with business partner, it was going to be a challenge with two of us to support a family on a fly shop income. Sold out to my partner in the late 90s, and I took an in-house sales management position with Ross Reels in Montrose, Colorado. So moved over the hill, so to speak, to the western slope of Colorado, ran sales for Ross, was involved in the marketing side as well. And in 2010, the 3M Corporation that owned Scientific Anglers at the time acquired Ross as one of their fly fishing brands. So my position moved to the Twin Cities in 2011. Spent roughly about 2 years there working out of the 3M Center with sales management responsibilities for both Ross Reels and Scientific Anglers. Had a leadership change at 3M and kind of had some refocus in terms of their businesses and where they wanted to be focused. And they chose to sell the fly fishing brands in 2013, and both Ross and Scientific Anglers were acquired by the Orvis Company, which is based out of Sunderland, Vermont. So that moved my position here to Midland, Michigan at the Scientific Anglers facility, which is where it was founded in 1945, and the building that we're in, built in 1973. As the business expanded, that's kind of where we're at. I had sales responsibility or headed up the sales department and customer service post-acquisition for Jim LePage, who came over from Orvis to kind of stand the business up and get it on its 2 feet post-acquisition, kind of into the next phase of its history in the industry. And was the only person from the 3M business team or business side that made that transition. We have a manufacturing facility here in Midland, about 45 people based on the manufacturing, shipping, and receiving, but we had to build a whole new business team that is, with marketing, with finance, product development, etc. So Jim and myself and the leadership team that we had brought on board in the middle of 2013 post-acquisition is what we were committed to getting done those first couple of years. We had a lot of work in front of us to just, again, get the business kind of reestablished and on a firm foundation, because a lot of those other periphery responsibilities around the brand went away when 3M chose to sell it. So that was kind of the first couple of years post acquisition with the
Hmm.
Orvis
Hmm.
ownership, and then we really were able to clean up some of our product assortment.
So I wanted to ask you though, Brad, I did want to interject here really quickly.
Sure.
I think the biggest question is, I know you're talking, we're going to get into like where you guys clean up because the innovation technology is a huge aspect. But I think the listeners, I know myself, like we just want to know, I want to kind of kill the elephant in the room here right now is what's it like waking up and getting in your car and going to work every day as the president of Scientific Anglers and just like hanging out in Scientific Anglers headquarters? I mean, that in itself is a great achievement and it's a dream job for most. I mean, that's kind of where I want to know what that's like.
It is. I feel blessed every morning. Get up and come to the office, if you will, and go to work. Been very fortunate to be able to make my entire professional career in the fly fishing industry.
Hmm.
I'm kind of both sides of both the retail and then from the manufacturing side. And it's we've got I can't praise enough the crew that we have here at SA and their commitment to the product, to the sport, to the conservation side of protecting the resource. Yes, it is work
Yeah.
and it is what I do to make a living and support my family and put food on the table. But at the same time, it's also my passion. It's my hobby. And I think that sentiment certainly carries throughout our building here in Midland, Michigan.
So then I love that, Brad. I love how that ricochets down from the top right down to the bottom. But I do want to talk. I know you mentioned earlier that the company was founded in 1945 and it has extremely deep roots within the fly fishing industry. Can you walk us through some of the brands like history, like the past for those that might not know?
Sure. Yeah, I can kind of give you the abbreviated timeline here. So the company was founded here in Midland, Michigan, 1945. Three gentlemen, Leon Martouche, Claire Harris, and Paul Reuters, formed a partnership in 1945. And probably a little known fact about the brand, which is kind of
Hmm.
cool. It was originally the business was founded to sell rod tubes. Two of the founders worked for the Dow Corporation, which is headquartered here in Midland, in the magnesium department, and they were going to go to market, or they did go to market with magnesium rod tubes
Cool.
back in
I
1945,
like that.
as well as some fly line care products. At that time, it was silk lines,
Hmm.
and they required maintenance and topical treatments of silicone-based materials to keep them floating, keep them flexible, etc., just to maintain the performance of the line. So those were kind of the initial products that they started with. All kind of in the background going on is they always felt that there was a better option to silk fly lines. And over a course of years, worked with about 300 different polymeric formulations trying to figure out the best coating that they could put onto a braided core to create what is now known as the modern fly
Hmm.
lines that
Hmm.
we all fish today. And the first product commercialized was in 1952. That they had done some contract work for a couple of other fishing line companies that weren't, again, kind of broad in terms of that definition. Gladding was one of the companies back in the 40s and early 50s that they worked with and built some products
Okay.
for. But the first Scientific Anglers fly line was brought to market in 1952, and that was the first, if you will, plastic or
Hmm.
PVC coated line that was on a level or even braided core that had a taper created within the thickness of the coating along the length of the line to create either a double taper or a way forward.
Cool.
From that point, kind of start to go into some of the technology advances in terms of that timeline of products. In 1954, the Aircel Supreme was brought to market, and that had micro balloons in the coating or in that polymeric or that PVC coating over that core. PVC by nature is heavier than water,
Okay.
along with the core material, which is a braided nylon typically or a single strand monofilament. So the early lines were done with a braided core that had the way that they were braided allowed for the core to be somewhat hollow. So they floated, but they didn't float great. But it was still a big advancement over what silk lines could do. So the addition of the little glass spheres or micro balloons that are mixed into the coating was a huge advancement in flotation. And we use that same technology today in all of our floating lines. As much as we are continually looking for new materials to help with flotation, that's certainly one of the things in floating lines. and particularly the smaller line weights when you start to get down in 2, 3, 4 weights and lines that have a thinner tip profile that make it more difficult to float those because there's just less coating. We still use that same technology that was founded back in the 50s today.
Cool. It's just the right technology currently, right? So,
It just
yeah,
works,
exactly.
and it works extremely
Yeah,
well, and it fits our manufacturing process very well.
yeah, absolutely.
So, floating lines is definitely where it all started. And then the wet cell lines, and I should add the air cell and the wet cell are still products that we manufacture
Hmm.
today. We've brought them kind of up to speed with our modern technologies, but the wet cell was the first sinking lines introduced. And specifically lines that were designed to be able to fish subsurface more effectively versus adding weight to the leader or weight to the fly. In the early 60s was kind of the introduction of the first specialty or species specific type tapers. It was the 1962, 1963 that the very first bass bug and saltwater tapers were introduced. So tapers that were built more for an application to deliver a different type of fly than just a trout fly or a small panfish popper or something of that nature or a wet fly, but something that was designed to handle the
Hmm.
wind, handle a bigger, more wind resistant fly, and had that built into a specialized taper. So that was kind of the kickoff of, today it's kind of exploded. You can find fly line tapers for just about any species of fish that you'd want to go pursue, but that's been around since the early 60s. Kind of fast forwarding a little bit into the early 70s, one of the first patented features that Scientific Anglers put into a line was a feature called a telecast bump. And we still use that today on some of our air cell lines. Essentially, it was a slight bump or just an enlarging of the coating 30 feet back from the tip to identify the back of the weight forward head, kind of the load point or the sweet spot to be able to pick up to start your next cast. So as you were stripping in the running line through your fingers, you would feel that little bump or that thicker diameter and know that you were at the back of the weight forward head, kind of that ideal load point for the
And
rod.
you guys still offer that now, don't you? Yeah,
And we
yeah,
still use that in the air cell lines. We with multicolor and being able to
yeah.
do smooth and or textured lines, we can build that in other ways. But certainly for a newcomer into the sport that's learning to cast and trying to just be as consistent as possible with their pickup and being able to load their rod, it's really a nice benefit to someone new to the sport or somebody that's working on trying to improve upon their casting skills. So kind of the early 70s also was a point in time where the business had grown pretty substantially. It was mid 60s when Leon Martouche Sr. Decided that he needed to kind of take a little more behind the scenes role. And it was suggested to his partners that his son, Leon Martouche Jr., come in some capacity. And he came in and started as the treasurer. And after a couple of years, moved up into the role of president of the brand. Leon Jr. In the early 70s, 1973 to be specific, it felt like he had grown the company to a kind of what his expectation was, I guess, at the time, and was looking for how he could maybe further the growth and development of the brand, and was approached by the 3M company. They were interested in acquiring, kind of fit their manufacturing model of what they do with some of their industrial products, sandpaper, tape, etc.
Post-it
Kind
notes.
of long and thin,
Yeah.
reel to reel manufacturing, which is similar to what we do with fly lines. So the 3M company acquired the brand in 1973. They built the building that we are still currently in, where we do 100% of our fly line manufacturing. Interesting, it's the only building on the planet that was designed and built specifically for manufacturing fly lines.
Cool.
So we have a moat on three sides of the building. We have a casting deck out there, and literally our product development guys can, create a taper, run it through production, get that reel out of production, put it on a reel, and go cast it and get immediate feedback. If we're close or if we need to make some
Hmm.
adjustments to the taper, and then do those adjustments, go right back out and cast it within just a very short time period. So it's kind of the architecture of the building is also very much a part of Midland. We have from the Dow company and the Dow family, one of their sons was an architect here in Midland. And we have a lot of mid-century modern architecture, and our building is very much in line with that. So you kind of feel like my office, as an example, as I'm sitting here, is kind of like a time capsule a little bit back to the 70s in terms of its look and its design. But it's very much a part of who we are and our core and our culture of the brand, which is kind of cool, kind of a testimony to the Midland, Michigan
So, Brad,
connection.
do you have wood paneling walls or what?
I have a
Okay.
cork wall in front of my desk, as well as my meeting table. But I do have a lot of wood features from the ceiling, which is interesting.
I did want to ask you, 75 years is a long time. And with all the success that you've had, there must have been some failures along the way. Can you explain to us some of the failures that you could foresee or you've noticed scientific anglers had in their vibrant history?
Yeah, I think I think those the initial product, the magnesium rod tubes, and some of those line care products were something that just never really took off. And as I've reviewed some of the old documents from Leon Martouche and from his son Leon Jr., they allude to that it just was never really successful. And in the back of their mind, they always have that idea that they could do something better with fly lines. And that's been a strong mission statement from the very early days. So I think some of those periphery products early on didn't perform to expectation. And it's been interesting because over the time of the brand, mixed in with the fly lines, SA was the first brand to do. They worked very closely with American Fishing Tackle Association, AFTMA, Manufacturers Association, in the development of what's kind of today's standard of fly line weighting system. The early PVC lines were difficult to control. There was a pretty wide range of weight, so it was hard to get them to match to rods. And then there was the letter system, HDH, HDL, et cetera, that was put in place early on. And then that moved to where we're at today with specific line weights. 4-weight, 5-weight, 6-weight, as an example, 5-weight line. That standard is measured in the first 30 feet of the line. And like a 5-weight, the spec calls for that to be 140 grains. A 6-weight is 160 grains. So SA, within that, kind of developing that standard or being involved with developing the standard around modern fly line weights, also throughout the course of that introduced the system reels and system fly rods. And they were the first brand to bring a complete fly fishing outfit that had a specific line weight with a reel and a line that matched the rod, or kind of created that system, if you will. And that was around for some time in different, kind of different looks. There were different reels. They had partnered with Hardy on the original system reels, so they looked very much like a Hardy marquee. Early 80s, they had some UK manufactured reels. The System 1 and System 2 reels came into being, which are probably the most widely known scientific anglers reels. And we had reels literally up until 2016 with the Scientific Anglers logo on it. So there's been other kind of periphery products throughout the years, whether it be rods, reels, rod cases, different accessories, fly boxes, different line maintenance products. And, I think we always, there were sales there. We felt like it was reasonably good business. But at the end of the day, about 3 or 4 years ago, we sat down as a leadership team and decided, you know what, if we can't do those at the same level that we do fly lines, which is difficult when you don't have the manufacturing for those and you're partnering with outside vendors to build products to your specifications, we're probably better focusing on our core. And that's exactly what we've done. So if you look at our catalogs from, say, 2010 or 11, you see a pretty wide breadth of different fly fishing items in there. Today, we are 100% focused on terminal, on line. So it's backing, fly line, leader, tippet, and even our accessories that we do carry are more specifically kind of associated to the line world, things like clippers or a retractor to hold your clippers or knot type tools. Those are the types of things that we really feel are core. And with our parent company being Orvis and them having such a broad range, the other items, it just didn't really make sense for us to, one, be trying to compete in that space with all the other manufacturers as well as with our parent company.
No, it makes sense. And you know what, but you're focused on fly lines and you're doing fly lines extremely well. And, with that, we look at the history and the innovation plays a large part of your growth. Since you've been with the brand, Brad, what are some recent innovations and technologies that you and your team have developed over at SA?
So the biggest things that we've done here, again, since 2013, would say since 2010, since I was affiliated with the brand from a business perspective, the textured lines had been introduced in 2006 under the
Hmm.
Shark Skin banner. And those were like a raised diamond pattern on the surface of the lines. And kind of the marketing and the advertising at that point was it'll easily add 10 feet to any angler's cast, which was a pretty fair claim because the reduction of friction that created having that textured or micro replicated surface allowed for less contact in the guides, easier line speed, easier distance. That product was kind of a polarizing product in that if you were aggressively stripping, if you were fishing in the tropics and your hands, you were in heat, humidity, your hands were sweaty, your skin was soft, that texturing was pretty aggressive and it could burn you even to the point of kind of blistering or cutting your fingers. So on one side, it was great from a performance when casting, but there were, again, some polarizing
Yeah, that's
attributes to it.
definitely a challenge.
So
Yeah.
it is. And as we started doing more with multicolored lines, multi-density lines, one of the first introductions that we did under our current ownership was the Sharkwave product. And that was our first 3-color textured line with specialty tapers. And strong product. It was received into the market well when we launched. There was still kind of that lingering hangover, if you will, of negativity around shark skin and the noise in the
Hmm.
guides or the abrasion on
Hmm.
your fingers. We had a couple of different texturing technologies in there. There was that original raised diamond pattern, and kind of right towards the end of 3M's ownership, they had developed what they called mastery texturing. Today we call that our shooting texture, and that's dimpled like a golf ball. So instead of raising the pattern on the surface of the line with sharp edges or linear lines to it like the shark skin pattern, these are round dimples that are replicated into the coating or the outer surface of the line. So again, it
Yep.
reduces friction, enhances flotation, and shootability and durability. What we learned very quickly was that having shark in the name of that product for some anglers was kind of a negative right out of the gate. So when we launched our most recent premium product, our Amplitude series, and we have a smooth version of that and a textured version, we use that dimpled or that shooting texture on the running line and the head portion of the lines. And then we use that original shark skin, or what we call floating texture now, up on the tip and the front taper of the line. The interesting thing about the shark skin, and one of the things that was in the patent with that is, yes, it does help with shootability and slickness and durability, but it also has a much higher contact angle with the surface of the water. So it has a contact angle of about 109 degrees, so it floats better. And we use it up in an area of the line where we're looking
Yep.
for more flotation, but it's a non-handling area, so that you don't have to worry about that abrasiveness on your fingers as you're stripping or as you're casting and double hauling, etc. So the other thing, your initial question was about technology. Texturing has been a big part of that over the last 6 years, since 2013, in terms of products that we've launched. The other thing that we came to market with a little over a year ago, about 18 months ago now, was our AST Plus technology. And Scientific Anglers, back in the mid 90s, introduced a technology called AST, which was a dry lubricant that we put into the coating of the lines. And so that goes from that braided core all the way through the PVC coating to the outer surface. It was a huge advancement, durability of lines, because we're reducing friction again, and just overall performance when casting and fishing. We always had been looking for the next generation or next version of that, and we landed on that with a patented liquid compound that actually moves within that coating, and it naturally migrates to the surface of the line as the coating begins to wear. So it extends the life of a fly line, and it provides that kind of brand new out of the box slickness long after the fly line is on the reel and it's left the
So
fly
we're
shop
we're
and you're
talking like
fishing with
years
it.
later or something, right?
Yes, And it's hard to put a,
Yeah.
a lifespan on a fly line because there's a
Oh,
lot
for
of
sure, for
variables there.
sure. You know.
But in our testing, we're finding that it lasts up to 8 times longer than
Okay.
competitive lines. And we test that. The way that we look at that in a lab environment is we will take the same diameter lines in our lines and what else is out available in the market, and we've got a machine that has a wheel that turns. So one end of the line attaches to that reciprocating wheel, and then we thread it through a rod tip top, and we hang a weight on the end of that
Hmm.
each piece of line, same amount of weight, and we turn it on, and one down and up cycle through the tip top is what, or one motion down and up is what we count as one cycle. And the AST plus lines were pushing the threshold of 90,000 to 100,000 cycles before we start to see what we would deem as a failure, and that would be
Yeah.
cracking or parts of the coating starting to come off. Our next closest competition we're seeing in the neighborhood of about 30 to 35,000 cycles, and then it drops off pretty quickly below that. So the point being here, these are premium lines. The Amplitude textured line with all of our technologies, current technologies, is $129 price point. That's a lot of money when you think of a fly line, when in its simplest form is basically a plastic
You,
coated string.
you know what, Brad? It might seem like a lot of money. Just to stop you there, it might seem like a lot of money, but essentially you're going to get double the life or longer than another conventional fly line. Like you just stated that, right? So you're right.
You just hit
I
the
mean,
nail
and
on the
that's
head.
why I
Yep.
personally, all my reels are spun up with those, and for that reason as well. Like I'm very frugal, and I like to make sure that I'm getting the most, and it's an amazing product. So, when you mentioned the testing, what other testing do you offer on your fly lines? So you have the reel testing, you have castability. Is there any other testing that you guys offer, like saltwater, or like just walk me through that?
Yeah, I mean, from a lab testing environment, and then we'll talk a
Hmm.
little bit about field. From a lab testing, we check for our core centering. We're extremely critical of ourselves when it comes to durability because we believe that durability and performance are the two biggest problems that we need to solve for anglers. And that's kind of how we approach all of our development is we look for problems or things that anglers struggle with that we can help solve that problem. So durability, performance. When again, we talked about the durability on the coatings going through a tip top. That's one test we do. Another test we do would be our welded loops. So where we fold the material back, heat it, and create that weld. Our go no go test for that would be that we expect the fly line itself to break before the welded loop
Nice.
breaks.
Yeah.
So we test that on an Instron machine. We randomly pull lines out of the production line as we continue to evolve our processes and how we weld or how we manufacture lines. We're constantly checking those. Core centering is the other big component where we'll cut lines and we'll look to make sure that we're centered within our tolerance on the core to the coating. The biggest issue with that is when a core is not centered, it can cause more coil and memory tangle in the line because the line will always try and go to that thin side of the coating in the guides. And it also becomes a durability issue because you just don't have as much coating on one area or one side of the line. And that ends up being the side that's making contact with the guides just by nature of the way the line moves in the guides to find that thinnest spot. So core
Just out of
centering.
curiosity, up here in Canada, sometimes the water that we fish freshwater fishing is quite cold, and I find other brands that I've used, the coiling, it's just literally like when we cast it, you could literally see it coiled right back to you, and it drifts almost back onto the reel itself. And that's just you're saying that's due to uneven texture coating along the line. Is that correct?
That could be a component of it. It also has to do, it's a great question, and it's one that we often get from consumers is this line
Hmm.
okay in hot water? Is this line okay in cold water? Most of our general purpose lines, we try and build, we look at the core material. We have stiffer and more supple cores that we work with. And then we also have the same in our coatings. So if we're developing a line for trout fishing, or maybe we know it's going to be western half of the U.S., Western Canada,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
trout line or it's a steelhead line. Those are typically going to be in a cooler to colder water and weather environment most of the time. So we use a more supple core, we use a more supple coating formulation, so that when it's in that cold temperature, there's less of that memory. It's hard to get
Hmm.
100% rid of it. So you always still need to do a little bit of stretch when you're ready to fish, and you've strung the rod up, you've pulled line out, just to stretch the line and get even the memory that comes off being stored on the reel stretched out of it, so you get the best performance when you're casting. If we're developing a line for the tropics, as an example, the trout line core, we use a braided, what we call multi-filament. It's a braided monofilament, or nylon,
Yeah.
not mono, but nylon. So it's a very supple material, very similar to like backing, but it's got a little bit of stretch to it. So it will stretch the same as the PVC coating, so we don't get delamination of the core to the coating. We get good adhesion if they both stretch at about the same rate. If we're doing a tropical line, say it's a tarpon line, or a line that's going to be used in the South American jungle for peacock bass, then we go to a braided monofilament, or what we call our tropic core. And then we also use a harder, stiffer coating to handle the heat, the humidity, laying on the deck of the boat in those temperatures, kind of anything in that equator fishery, if you will, so that it doesn't turn into a limp noodle when it gets hot and it's in that environment. We still need to maintain some stiffness, so we have shootability and slickness, again, that performance of the line in that given environment.
Interesting. I like that. Brad, I also wanted to ask you for SA, no secret that SA is known for its supreme quality of products and the function of the products. Do you think in your testing and innovation, do you know what any other reasons why you guys might be as good as you are?
I think a big part of that is the testament of our development team over the years, whether it was, that the company was founded with trying to solve the problem of let's find a fly line alternative to silk that doesn't require as much maintenance and care to keep it floating and give you a longer lifespan of usage. And I think we still view it from that perspective today. We try and identify where there's a need for a product. We're very much in a want
Hmm.
market. We're in the recreational sport fishing industry. This is what our customers do for recreation. It's what I do for recreation. So they don't need our product. It's not it's not medications. It's not food. So we try and approach it. We put ourselves in that same position because we are consumers of
Yeah.
our own brand as well. We've got a very committed group of fly anglers under the roof here, and we look at those same needs in a particular fishery or a particular situation. If you're nymph fishing or fishing dry flies, you're throwing big streamers like we mentioned in the jungle, different tapers, different materials involved in the construction of that line to get best performance. And I think everybody on our team here looks at it that we want to try and help provide the best possible experience for our consumers that are using our products. And a fly line still seems, I mention it often when I'm talking with our dealers and even at consumer shows. On the shelf at retail, fly line's not the sexiest product. One of the most important, we would argue, probably the most important of your entire rod reel outfit to make it all work correctly. But it's not like a reel that clicks and makes noises and has a drag knob that turns. There's some feedback that you get from a reel turning it, or even on the retail floor. A rod you can shake, it responds, it wiggles, there's stiffness, there's the feel of the cork. Fly line's really hard to kind of convey that. So it has to be very much performance driven from our perspective. We want to provide the best possible performance in each of those different applications that a consumer might be
I
using.
totally agree. It is performance driven. I mean, the product has to be performance driven. Otherwise, people move on from the brand for sure. So with that said, Brad, I just also wanted to ask, is there anything new going on over at, or anything top secret going on at SA that you want to share with us?
We are always playing with new materials and new processes in terms of how we manufacture lines, materials that we use, and that goes back a little bit to
Hmm.
some of that testing. We talked about how we can do testing laboratory wise on current product. And then we have a staff of ambassadors and product testers that we send products to. We send new prototypes if we're using new materials or trying something different. Put that out with our guys that are full-time guides, or they're anglers that are fishing a couple hundred days a year themselves, and we get good feedback. And we're certainly very careful when we're looking at new technologies in terms of the length of time that we're testing and using that in the actual environment the product's being designed to be used in, to get that feedback from that field test staff or those guys that are product test. So we're constantly looking at the next best X, Y, or Z that we can put into a fly line, or the next best way that we can do welded loops to add to the durability of that. Without giving away too much, I mean, that stuff's always in the background going on. We've always been very, very technology
I'm just
driven
trying
and
to pull out
continue
too
to be
much from
today.
you here on that. That's I'm just trying to see if you have anything that's going to top the amplitude again out there for us. So, with that said, what other focus would your brand's focus be on, and why? Like, you have the technology behind it. What else are you guys currently focused on?
As I mentioned, the what we do here in Midland is the heartbeat of the brand. So fly lines are first and foremost. We also are do a lot with backing. We're the first to introduce kind of a custom color program with our backing and offered a multitude of different colors that as reels continue to get more and more ventilated and open in design,
You guys are the ones responsible for rainbow backing.
that could possibly be us. Yes. Trying to keep it that,
Hmm.
so it's fun. I mean, backing is important, yes, as a reel filler, more important in salt water when you're hooking big fish, and you need backing as that insurance policy. But when you buy a new reel and you match it with a new rod and you pick a color of
Hmm.
line that you personally like and you can see well when you're fishing, it was just a nice added touch to be able to offer that to the consumer to be able to kind of customize their outfit, if you will. We're also heavily focused on leader and tippet. While we don't do manufacturing of that, we do work with partners overseas,
Hmm.
as most of the brands do in the industry. We're constantly looking for a new proprietary formula in nylon that lends itself to better wet knot tensile strength, better fluorocarbon, better strength to diameter ratio. So we stay very close to that, but it's, fly lines are the nucleus of the business, and much of our product development is
Of
focused
course, yeah.
right around
Brad,
that.
how many fly lines or series of fly lines do you guys currently have?
So we look at it as more families. We have air cell, wet cell, which is our entry price points. We have frequency, which is our kind of our mid price point. Then we go into mastery, which is a family that's been around since the late 80s, morphed and has changed over the years. But mastery offers our widest breadth of different specialty tapers. And then we go into our amplitude series at the premium and the floating lines. Mixed in kind of with mastery and amplitude, we have our sonar series, which
Hmm.
is all of our sinking fly lines. And we use some of those technologies we talked about earlier, texturing, multicolor, multi-density. Our Titan sonar lines were the first triple density sinking lines to market back in 2016, and we're using a similar technology to that in some of our spay lines and our two-handed heads, which is multiple density, but we do that with what we call our SD, or our seamless density technology. And the difference there being in most of the multi-density line, probably the easiest way to think about it, when you look at a sink tip, you have a floating running line and part of the belly, and then you have maybe a 10-foot sink tip, and it goes from a floating
Hmm.
coating to a sinking coating within a very short distance. There's kind of a hinge point there. Our sonar triple density lines, we were able to do, the first one we launched was an intermediate sink 3, sink 5. So the running line was intermediate, then it had a sink 3 transitional section into a sink 5 head on the way forward portion of it. What that did, a couple of things. One, we were able to mass profile the line, so we could take our
Hmm.
floating Titan line and mass profile that into a multiple sink density sinking line. So even though it's a sinking line, it still casts and feels very
Floating
much
line,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the floating version when you have it strung up in the rod. The SD, or the seamless density, as we coat the different densities, as we are, say it's a intermediate sink 3 Scandi head, it will go from at the back of the head intermediate, and as we start to slow down the intermediate coating as it's being applied in the process, we're turning on the sink 3, so that over a span of, it can be inches or several feet, we kind of have all those densities from intermediate 2. So there's intermediate sink 2 to sink 3. So it's a very seamless transition of the mass or the density of the line which just equates into better, easier turnover. It eliminates that hinge point. It's just better performance. So we're starting to do that more in some of our single hand lines now that we'll be coming to market
So
with.
that's again, I like that. It's a little hint of the new technology that you're bringing forward. So, Brad, it seems like you guys are well diversified for any demographic, from beginner right up to like master or expert, whatever you want to call it. And it's very important. You feel it's important. I feel it's important for that to happen. And the industry has definitely recognized your importance in that, and you've won a lot of hardware and awards for that. What's the most recent award you guys have won, and what's it for?
We had the Amplitude series, kind of AST Plus, and specifically the new Infinity taper that we just launched June of 2013 or 2018 were some of the most recent Editor's Choice Awards from Fly Fisherman magazine, as well as from Fly Fusion magazine. And that was kind of based around, one, the technology of AST Plus, but then also the Infinity taper in that family as our new kind of multi-purpose all-round taper that you could use literally about anywhere on the planet for trout. And the heavier weights, you could use it for bass and pike type stuff. You could, maybe take it into the salt and some more moderate temperature ranges. We don't have a tropical version of it yet, but that taper in and of itself, which was a little bit longer head length weight forward. It's a half line weight heavy, just to kind of help load some of the more modern, faster action rods that need a little bit more mass outside the tip a little more quickly, just to get the rod to load and perform. So that's been two of the more recent ones.
You know what, Brad, as a large brand and you guys are currently expanding your reach and whatnot, how do you feel social media is a big aspect in your brand and playing a part of that?
I think it's definitely a big part our brand culture and who we are.
Mhm.
The thing I love about social media, you can kind of sit on both sides of the fence with it, but I think the thing that I love is it is that instant communication and connection with our consumers. Our Instagram page, certainly people like to see fish pictures. They like to have a story told through those images. So we do our best to try and keep that fresh and exciting and wanting people to come back. Go a little bit lighter there in terms of the product focus, because we know it's, you know,
Mhm.
there's a little bit of that dribbled in, and maybe it's more talking about a particular location and a fish that was caught using one of our products, whether it be a consumer, pro staffer, one of our retailers, etc. Facebook seems to be a platform where we do a little bit more around product, things that are going on in the media about our brand. Maybe it's a product award. It's a dealer event that we're going to be at, or our sales reps are going to be at, to engage with consumers and talk about our products and let people try the lines, et cetera, at that event. So kind of use them a little bit differently, but I think it's that connection. It is
Yes,
a
yeah.
global marketplace, and I think social media is the one place where we can
Mhm.
partner with other brands as well, and with our pro staff, our ambassadors, our retailers, and ultimately our consumers. And I like it because it's just, it's quick, it's immediate.
And it's also genuine too, right? Sure, it's genuine.
It
I love
is.
seeing behind the scenes. I know I love looking at your social page and seeing what's kind of going on and seeing shop pictures and whatnot. Now, you mentioned pro staff and ambassadors. Can you walk us through, like, I'm sure lots of people are wondering, how do they become a pro staff and an ambassador? Can you walk us through the process for that, or your selection process for that?
Sure. We have, a couple different tiers there. Our pro staff is a group of individuals that we work very closely with our sales representatives in their respective territories that they have sales responsibility for. Those are more regionalized in nature in those positions, many of which are guides or outfitters, might be a shop employee. They might be a photographer. They might be a writer or a blogger in that particular region or area of geography that's kind of a first adopter of new products. They're visible, they're active on social, they're strong in conservation efforts. So we let the sales representatives come to us with recommendations of who they want to have on their pro staff in their territory. And we utilize those pro staff at different dealer events, different trade shows, regional type events. So that's generally working in conjunction. When we evaluate folks for that, it's when we get those requests here, we encourage those individuals to reach out to our sales reps, because they're ultimately the ones that are going to make the decision for their territory or region. We also have our ambassador level, and that's a much smaller group of more national or nationally known individuals, in some cases outside the US as well, In that group, we look at, they're very much full-time guides or make their entire living full-time in the fly fishing industry. Pro staff, again, if they're a
Hmm.
blogger, they might be blogging about different topics in the outdoors, and fly fishing is a component of it. So while we look at that, there needs to be direct involvement in the industry for pro staff. Ambassadors need to be making their living in the industry full time. So, we've got some great ambassadors with Hillary Hutchins, Alice Osley out of Montana, Jeff Courier, Joel Dickey down in the Florida Keys, Josh
Yeah.
Hutchins in Australia, Blaine Chocolate, and we keep that fairly diversified so that Landon Mayer is kind of our Rockies trout guy. Jeff Courier is our global traveler, fishes for anything in any corner of the earth. Jeff Hickman and Brian Sylvie are two of our two-handed ambassadors up in the Pacific Northwest. Jeff Liskay here in the Great Lakes region is one of the two-handed gurus. So we try and look for different areas of focus that we can, because we're utilizing those individuals not only to help us promote the brand and interface with our dealers and consumers, but they're also a vital part of our product testing. So we want guys and women that are experts in their geographic area or their realm of what they do in the industry so that they're able to push the product to its limits when they're out there using
Nice. I
it.
like that, Brad. Definitely. Hey, quick question for you. How many applications a week do you think you get?
Oh,
Over 200?
from I wish. We are very fortunate in the fact that we have very little turnover here. I would say on average we get 2 or 3 inquiries a week. Certainly if we have a
Sorry, Brad.
position available, I just
I
filled
meant I meant for like pro
a
staff.
marketing position. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, for pro staff. Um, it's definitely fewer than it
Okay.
has been in years past. And we kind of cleaned house. Our pro staff blew up really big 4 or 5 years ago. We've really scaled that down, and we kind of each sales territory based on their total. We look at total number of dealers, how much total business we do there, kind of justifies how many we feel before we get to a saturation point. So in total, US, Canada, and then outside North America, we are sitting at about 80 pro staffers globally right now. Ambassadors, we're at about 14. In terms of application, I mean, we probably get those, I'd say 2, 3 a week.
Brad, you're a great leader and you've done many amazing changes for SA. Where do you get your inspiration from?
I think my biggest thing is just passion for the sport, for the industry, for the resource. Like when we first started, I feel blessed every day that I've been able to work in this industry and do something I love. Yes, it is work, but at the end of the day, I very rarely do I have a stressful day, and I think that's being able to push the product boundaries to provide the best possible product for the different fishing applications that they're being used in is at the end of the day is my motivation. And I truly believe that that's the mindset of our team here. I mean, we all have a common vision of where we want the brand to go and who we are as our identity as a brand. And again, it all comes back to the product. The product is what drives us to do what we do and to continue to push that to make it the absolute best we can so that the experience of our consumers.
I couldn't agree more. I do want to follow up with that. You guys do have a great product. I'm a personal believer in your product and user of your product. I definitely couldn't agree more with that. Any last minute words for our listeners?
I again just really appreciate the support of our consumers. I will say we are here. We've got a great customer service team. If there's any questions on our products that we can answer that they don't find on the website, we absolutely want to hear from our customers. Give us a phone call, shoot us an email. We love seeing pictures. That everybody in the entire office and the manufacturing floor love to see consumer photos of where our products are being used. And it doesn't have to be giant fish, in some crazy destination. I mean, some of the best pictures we get, the ones that I remember the most are, somebody's first trout or the first bluegill, or, it was the first time they went fly fishing and their first experience. Maybe they didn't even catch a fish, but they were so awestruck by the place that they were at and the scenery that was around them. And we're able to be a little part of that connection by what we do with the products that we put out there.
Just to follow that up with that as well, Brad, that's just awesome. The genuine connection that SA has with the loyal fly fishers that follow. So for sure. You know what, Brad, I want to thank you today for being on the show, and I want to thank SA for being on the show. It's been an honor to talk with you guys. With that said, I'm going to thank you guys as the listeners. yours.
Thank you very much, Greg. I really appreciate it.